I'm getting super amped for LVO. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another Glacial Geek Deep Thoughts Thin Coats with me, Phil, the Glacial Geek. Today, I'm still coming to you here from Savannah, Georgia, but I am getting ready today, which is why there's no thin coats. I'm getting all my stuff ready to head off to LVO. So, I know it's pretty exciting. I've been building up for this. I know you're probably sick and tired of seeing my Dark Angels at this point, but I've been super excited, and it's been a lot of fun to be able to play them and get ready with them. And now everything's ready. All my models are painted. I've just got to put together. I've just got to print off my lists. I've got to file the lists, and then I've got to pack. And I'm heading out tomorrow tomorrow. Heading out tomorrow for the LVO, which is super exciting. So hopefully it'll be a good weekend. I think my list is pretty good, so I think I've got a pretty decent chance of at least representing well. So maybe not winning, but certainly trying my best. I'm not jinxing myself in winning. There's on the Sunday of LVO, there's a Rogue Trader tournament, which is just a regular 3-round tournament like you would normally have. But that's also when the top 8 are going to be playing their elimination thing. So they said if you buy the ticket for the Rogue Trader tournament and you make it to the top 8, you could get a refund for your ticket, but I didn't want to jinx it, so I haven't bought that ticket yet. But the way they described it was that every table that they have for the 40K championships is going to be available for the Rogue Trader tournament, except for the ones that are used for the top tables for the championship. So I don't think it's going to sell out. I don't think I'm going to have a problem getting a ticket. But I didn't want to jinx myself if going in there. Who knows? It's like when you're going off to when your team's. It's like, what was it? The U.S. Men's soccer team, their coach got in trouble, got yelled at a bunch because when he went off to the World Cup, they only booked the hotel for like the first week, and everyone's like, "How can you only book for the first week? You have to plan to be there until the championships, until the final rounds, right?" So that's kind of what I'm doing is planning to be there at the top 8 tables on Sunday. But if all else fails, I'll just do the Rogue Trader tournament and have played 9 rounds of Warhammer. So hopefully I'll be playing 9 rounds of Warhammer, whether it's with a Rogue Trader tournament added on or because I've made it to the top table and I'm playing for the championship. Who knows? We'll see what happens. But it's kind of exciting, a lot of fun. So that's what I've been doing. That's what I've been building up for and getting ready for. So that's what I've been just getting everything done. So I got my last models painted. I did some. I don't know if you saw on the Facebook page, but I finished up some more Reavers. This time I gave a 5-man squad with the bolt carbines. So give myself a little bit more flexibility with my list. So my final list is a battalion detachment and a spearhead detachment. I have got a battalion detachment of Azrael and a lieutenant with a chainsword and 2 bolt pistols, because I looked into his entry and double checked with everything, and he is equipped with a bolt pistol, a chainsword, and a mastercrafted bolter, which costs 3 points, which would have put me 3 points over. So, but you can switch out the mastercrafted bolter for an item from the pistols, melee, or combi weapons section. So I switched him out with a bolt pistol, which is free. Because I'm just looking to keep the points down. I don't think honestly, if he's using both of those and the enemy's within 12 inches, I'm in trouble anyway. So, so I switched that out so I can keep him at 60 points as opposed to having to bump him up the 3 points, which would have put me over. So then I have 3 bolters scout squads, so 3 squads of 5-man bolter scouts, including Jenkins. So he's along for the ride. He's taking a trip to Vegas. Then I've got the 5-man Reaver squad with the grab shoots and the bolt carbines, 5-man Reaver squad with the grab shoots and the combat knives, and then I have a Primaris Ancient. I have the Dark Shroud with a heavy bolter, and I've got a Dark Talon, so that's the battalion. And then into the Spearhead, I've got a Talon Master, and I've got the 5-man Devastator squad with 4 las cannons and an Armorium Cherub. Then I've got a Mortis Pattern Dreadnought with 2 twin las cannons, an 8-man Hellblaster squad with plasma incinerators, and a 7-man Hellblaster squad with plasma incinerators. So I think it should be brutal. It's very similar to the one that you guys saw me run on the run against the Cadian squads, the Cadian guy, and I'm going to be, you'll be seeing it again, the full list like this, on Friday. I've actually got a battle report coming out. You'll see it. So that's what I've been running. I feel good about the list. I think it gives me all of the weapons and all of the things that I need to do to give a good showing of what I can do at LVO, and we'll just see how it goes. I think it should be exciting. Which actually, this kind of brings me up to what I'm going to be talking about today, which is how do you protect yourself against an Alpha Strike? So the last couple games that I've been playing and practicing for the LVO, I've been going second, either because I've got more drops than my opponent, or I just didn't win the roll-off. Either which way, well, I guess I'd always because I didn't win the roll-off, but so one time I had the +1 and I still failed it. So I've been going second a lot, and it hurts. It takes a big chunk out of you. You're sitting there, and you look at your list after that first round of Alpha striking, and you're like, how do I handle this? How do I respond to this? So there's a couple things to keep in mind when it comes to Alpha Strike. There's a couple different kinds of Alpha Strikes that you can face. There's the shooting Alpha Strike, which is just your opponent has a really good shooting army, and they just shoot the crap out of you before turn one is before you get to even act at turn one, and leaving you with a neutered army. The other option is that they can drop in and either tie you up so that your army can't do anything, or they can drop in and try to assault you and kill you in close combat. The Blood Angels are really good at that. Even Chaos is really good at that with Magnus using Warp Time and Cultist being able to infiltrate with the Alpha Legion, just getting into your army and just making you have to do things and focus on things that you didn't want to, that you wouldn't have done if you had complete control over your target priority. So let's kind of go over what you can do to help prevent yourself from getting Alpha struck with the shooting. So we'll start with shooting. So this is something I've been thinking about, because a lot of my army, there's a lot of really strong shooting in my army. So there's a lot of really tough targets, like good targets for my opponent to try to want to kill before I can get a shot to use them. And the reality is that I don't want them dead. So I've been trying to figure out the best way to keep them alive if they're getting shot at that first turn before they can do anything. My biggest answer was find a way to make their shooting less effective. The key for mine is having that Dark Shroud within range of a lot of my army. So the big those squads of Hellblasters, all my characters, they're all within range of my Dark Shroud, which is -1 to hit. There's other units out there that can give -1 to hit. There's even entire army traits that you can take that are going to be -1 to hit, especially at the long range, like Altaok and the such. And what it does is it just creates a situation where your opponent is just not going to get as many hits on you. And in doing so, it ameliorates a lot of the damage that they can do. So it makes it less effective. And in so doing, it means that you're going to be more alive than you would have been otherwise. I know not all armies have this ability, which is why there's other options that you can do, that you can take to kind of ameliorate, which is also part of what I'm doing, which is learning how to hide. Just assume you're going second. Just assume you're going second. Even if you've got 3 drops and there's no way your opponent can beat you in the drops, just assume you're going second, because if you roll that 1 and your opponent rolls a 3 even, they're going to beat you even with that +1. So assume you're going second, and you can deploy yourself more defensively. So like I said, if you've got a unit like a Dark Shroud that gives you the -1 to hit, make sure you circle around them. You may want to spread them out because of trying to take out different units in their army, but understand that if they go first, they're just going to wail into you. And I've had that happen to me a fair number of times. I try to place my Mortis Pattern Dreadnought in a place where I think he's going to be more effective for shooting, and suddenly he's dead turn 1 and he's not doing me any good. So it doesn't matter if he was going to be more effective for shooting. If he's dead, he's doing me nothing. He's doing no good at shooting. So now you have to deploy him. I think you're going second. So maybe you deploy them behind a wall. So at ITC FAQ, the first floor of ruins is line of sight blocking. So you can hide things in the first floor of ruins so that your opponent can't actually see them at turn 1. I know there's some artillery that doesn't require line of sight, which there's nothing really you can do about that. But there's still going to be a lot in that army that does require line of sight, and in so doing, you're just creating it so that they can't target them. You know, they can't see him, they can't shoot him, they can't kill him. Sure that that Dreadnought now has to move next turn if he wants to go shoot something because he has to get out from behind that wall. But I'd rather take the -1 to my shooting than have 0 shooting because he's dead. So deployment has to be made. There's a lot of considerations when you go into deployment, but one of the things you need to remember is try to keep it so that your important units can't be killed. If your important units can't be killed turn 1, or it becomes extremely difficult for them to be killed turn 1, you're going to be in a better position than if you had just sat yourself out in the middle trying to get better positioning to shoot yourself. Because if you're dead, it doesn't matter what your positioning was, you're dead. Not much you can do about that. So hide units, take that -1 for moving with heavy weapons just so they can be able to shoot next turn. Get something that to try to take away your opponent's ability to shoot. So -1s to hits are always very good. So Dark Shrouds are great for Dark Angels armies, and that's my experience with that. Alteok is also a really good choice because of that. And suddenly your opponent's alpha striking shooting isn't going to be as effective on you as it would have been if you didn't prepare properly like that. The other kind of alpha strike that you need to worry about is the kind that drops in to try to, out of deep strike, to take control of your table board and harass you with shooting, or harass you with shooting, harass you with assaults, harass you with just being there. There's a lot of ways to do that. I like to do it with my Reavers to my opponent. You can also have to worry about Dark Reapers dropping in out of the webway portal, because they're going to be hitting on 3s regardless. It doesn't matter if they moved with those weapons. So they're going to be spending those command points to drop the Dark Reapers out of deep strike, and they're going to drop down and then they're going to shoot you. And if you leave them a lane to get at your important stuff, you're in trouble. Or you have like infiltrating cultists that you can have from Alpha Legion that suddenly they're at the end, right before the game turn 1 starts, they're placed 9 inches away from your units, and then they move and then they assault. And then now you have 40 cultists all up in your grill, and there's not much that you can do about it. It just becomes a pain and a drudge to try to like whale your way through all of those cultists when you'd rather be shooting at their Fire Raptor or their Magnus or whatever it is else that you'd rather be shooting at. If you don't take care of those cultists, they're just going to tie you up and make your life miserable. So how do you protect against something like that? Well, deep striking requires you to be 9 inches away. So make sure you have screens. Every army has screens. Some armies are better at screens than others. Tyranids and Imperial Guard are very good with their screens because they've got very cheap troop choices that come with a lot of guys that can take up a lot of space if you just trail them out in a long, long line. That works really, really well. But, Space Marines have scouts. Eldar have rangers and scouts and stuff like that. And what you need to do is you just need to, or even Eldar even have just guardians. Just a ton of guardians spread out is going to take up space. And that's what you need to do, is you need to take up space. So if you're doing a Space Marine army and you've got some scouts, make sure you place them out in front of you, even out in the no man's land, so that you can claim territory out there that they can't drop down into, and make sure that you have everything spaced out and take your time. You know what I mean? You don't have to sit there for 9 hours, but take the time to pull out your measuring tape and make sure that that's 9 inches and that you don't leave a nice 6-inch space for more, for somebody's squad to just plop in right behind you in your back line. If you can control and make sure that your deployment zone is hard to deep strike into, you're going to win out on that because they need to deep strike close to you. If you have the ability to reach out further out past your deployment zone, like putting out a scout squad right in front of you like that, you're pushing them further back, and suddenly their deep strike opportunities or their infiltrate opportunities are back in their own deployment zone, which is where you want them anyway, because if they pop down in their own deployment zone, that's where you assumed they were going to be. That's their place. You can leave them over there. Having units whose sole purpose, is to just take up space on the table during deployment is key. My scouts, their one job is to prevent deep strikers from being able to get close to my main units. Once they've done that job, everything else they do past that point is gravy. That's why they're on my list, is to do that. Once they've done that, if they kill a unit with shooting, if they tie up a unit with assault, if they manage to hold objectives, all of that is gravy. Their job is to keep the enemy away from me. So they act as that buffer, that screen. They can keep things away from deep, and once you keep things from being able to deep strike where they can be most effective, if that 40-man blob squad of cultists it drops in and infiltrates in and assaults my scouts, I don't care. That's 55 points that I'm willing to sacrifice to then be able to either, if the scouts survive, drop back and then wail into them with the rest of my shooting, or just keep them all tied up away from me up over there, because they're gonna have trouble. You know, they're hitting on fives, I think, hitting on fours or fives, wounding on fives. You know, even scouts are going to last a little bit during that. I know it's a lot of attacks, but they can keep them tied up at least another turn to keep them away from your shooting units. So you can get into a position where you can wail into them and hopefully take them out. On top of that, you then have the so that's what those guys are there for. So if you're guard, you want to have some infantry units that you can just spread out in your deployment zone. If you're a Space Marine player, you want the scouts out there. Eldar, you want guardians. If you're Tyranids, you want some gaunts, termagants or hormagaunts, whatever you want, any kind of gaunt, any kind of little gribbly, and just spread them out in your deployment zone. And suddenly now you make sure that you control your side of the board. And if you can control your deployment zone, you're going to be doing better than most any other situation, honestly. So you've got that going on. The other problem that you might face is just a very fast army getting into your grill. The main cause of this issue is Magnus, because he can move his 16 inches, cast warp time, and suddenly he can move 16 inches again, and now he can charge. That's a 48 inch 44 inch threat range for assaults. That's nuts. You know, deploying your army isn't going to be easy to keep them far away from that. But what you can do is you can keep them from being able to avoid your screens. So in this kind of situation, you need to look at the army and at your opponent's army and see what they're going to do. If they have a lot of deep striking units, if they have units that are going to be coming in, infiltrating into your face, then at that point, you need to make sure that you take ground control, like I was talking about just previously. You need to make sure that they can't deep strike in places that are going to hurt you really bad. But if they've got a Magnus and you're afraid of that Magnus warp timing to come kill you, your screen needs to differ slightly. Because the big issue with Magnus with warp time is that he can run up to like right in front of your screen, and then because he has fly, warp time right over your screen, and now suddenly he's assaulting into the heart of your army. He's assaulting into the thing that you were trying to protect. So if you are running up against a Magnus or a Mortarion, whoever it is that's getting their warp time and they're just coming flying up into your face, your screen needs to be a little bit closer to the heart of your army. You need to make sure that there's not a gap in between your screen and your main part of the army that he can fit into and stay an inch away from both. It's really difficult. And this takes a little bit more care, but it might mean that you have to spread out your main core a bit to give yourself a little bit more control. And then you have to make sure that he's got, about a 6-inch base, I think, on the base of him. And if you can keep it so that there's 7 inches between them, he can't fit so that he's an inch away from both your screen and your main part of your army. So you pull it in, and that's more of like, I called it more like the onion. So where it's like layers very close together as opposed to just like spreading out and just taking out ground control. Because the spreading out works really well to keep people from deep striking in, but Magnus can't deep strike now because of the FAQ. Although I've heard that he might be getting it back when the Thousand Suns book comes out, which is going to be brutal. But if you can keep him away from your core with this kind of onion method, you're going to end up being safer. So basically, all of these screens, and if your opponent doesn't have a lot of shooting, you don't have to worry about hiding your units from the shooting. You know, if you're going up against a demon army, their whole thing is that they're going to come flying at you, either deep striking or jumping down or running at you. And at that point, you don't really need to worry about the deep strikers. Or you don't really need to worry about the shooting, so you don't have to hide your Mortis Pattern Dreadnought or your tanks or whatever it is. You can just have them out in the open there because they're not going to shoot. And at that point, it's better to spread them out a bit to give yourself some ground control. If your opponent doesn't have something that can leap over your screen, you can push out that screen a little more so that you've just got a little bit more space to keep yourself protected. So if they're a ground unit, they don't have fly, or if they're deep striking down, spread it out a bit. But if they're going to have something like a Magnus warp time and into your face, then you need to keep it together a little bit more compact, a little bit more castled, so that you can protect yourself against getting an early turn charge from Magnus. Because the best way to take down Magnus is just throw a whole bunch of weight of fire. Strong fire sometimes helps. I love my supercharged Hellblasters when doing it. But if you can get a whole lot of shots into him, he's going to start rolling 2s on those invul saves. So even if he's got, the 3-up, he bumps himself up to a 3-up invul save, re-rolling 1s, he's eventually going to start rolling some 2s, and he starts going down pretty quick once you can get that damage onto him. Same thing with Mortarion. There's only so many 5s that they can roll. Well, sometimes I feel like there's an unlimited number of 5s that they can roll, but hypothetically and statistically, there's only a certain number of 5s that they can roll. So if you can keep him just the shots going on him without him getting all up in your face, you're going to do better, and you're going to be able to handle him better. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on how to handle it. Basically, how you handle keeping yourself from dying to an Alpha Strike is expect to go second. Understand what your opponent's army is going to be doing to execute that Alpha Strike. So are they going to be deep striking in to shoot you? Are they going to be deep striking in to assault you? Are they going to be running up the board really fast with other kind of shenanigans like psychic powers and stratagems to assault you? Are they going to just shoot you off the board from their table edge? Whatever it is, you need to understand what it is that they're going to do to try to hurt you, and you need to protect yourself against that. So if they're going to shoot you from their table edge, hide your units so they can't. If they're going to deep strike in to shoot you or assault you, take up as much board space as you can with your screens, with your chaff, and then they can't drop in where they need to cause you the pain. Are they going to just warp time right into your face? Then make it more difficult for them to do so. Keep them further back, and make sure that you're protected closer in with layers of army as opposed to just the one set of screen just spreading out as far as you possibly can. So those are my thoughts. It takes a lot of practice. It takes a lot of work, and I am not the best at this. I've gotten a lot better. I've gotten a lot better at my deployment. I've gotten a lot better at making sure that I'm protected against deep strike than I used to. But I also need to learn how to anticipate, the thing like Magnus jumping into my face, because that's the one I always have trouble with, is that he can leap over my screens that I put out there to worry about the deep striking, and I need to not worry about that when I'm facing against Magnus. I need to make sure that he can't get into the core of my army first turn, because once he does that, I'm in trouble. So those are my thoughts on the game. Those are my thoughts on how to handle the Alpha Strike, because there's a lot of people that are very afraid of Alpha Strike, which is understandable. I mean, it really does hurt, but I've had a lot of games where I've lost a big chunk of my army, and if you design an army so that you don't have just one gimmick, you're probably going to be doing better. So if you have that one linchpin that's supposed to do all of the work for your army, it becomes very easy for your opponent to see that, choose them, and just wail into them with their entire army and take them out. And suddenly now you're, up a creek without a paddle. But if you manage to have a list that you build that has a lot of different threats, has a lot of different ways to attack your opponent, then even if you're hurt that first Alpha Strike, you can return with a Beta Strike that's going to be just as horrendous and just as hard. So you need to make sure that having that kind of diverse list, having that kind of well-balanced list is going to help you support an army going forward in a game that you do get Alpha Struck. So it's just things that you need to keep in mind to keep yourself safe. So I hope that was helpful. These are all things that I'm going to be keeping in mind when I'm going down to LVO and I'm looking across the table at some of the roughest lists that I've faced, and I'm going to be trying to do my best to keep it all in mind as they come flying at me. So I hope you guys have all enjoyed this. I hope you found it interesting. Let me know what your guys' tips are for defending against an Alpha Strike, and also what you do once an Alpha Strike happens and how do you respond to that kind of thing. So because it's really easy to see some key parts of your army go down and then just give up, scoop your army or go in and shake hands with your opponent and be like, I'm done, I'm out. I mean, you're never going to win any game that you give up. So, what are your responses to Alpha Strike? How do you respond to losing a big chunk of your army? What do you do to make sure that you're, that you can either survive it enough so that you can respond, or what do you do? What's your responses? What do you do to take care of the Alpha Strike? Because, now with the +1 to the roll-off, making sure you get done first isn't going to win you first turn every time. Now you've got to worry about it because it's easy enough for your opponent to roll higher than you. So it's, you just got to try your best, and let me know what you guys think. Those are my ideas. I think they're pretty effective, and I think they're pretty good to keep in mind when playing the game. So let me know what you think, and keep the conversation going down below. So thank you guys always. I hope you guys have all enjoyed it. I certainly have. I have been Phil the Glacial Geek as always, and until next time, have fun.